Welcome to the Gita in Action podcast. My name's Radha Priti, and I am here with a family of seekers. We are reading through the Bhagavad Gita, and we just finished on Thanksgiving. We just finished chapter 2. So today we will be moving into chapter 3, which is a really nice chapter. It's called Karma Yoga, and we talked a little bit about Karma Yoga in chapter 2. We were kind of introduced to it, but Krishna's really going to elaborate on it in this chapter and teach us much more about it. So looking forward to that. Lots of good lessons and hopefully lending itself to some good discussions. So thank you all for being here. And if you're not here and want to be here live with us, you can text me, message me on Facebook, however if there's any way you can get a hold of me, I'll send you a link. Or if you're on Instagram, you can go to Seekers Quest 108 and see the bio, and there's a link to join the WhatsApp group that way. Also, this is going to be our last class for a couple weeks. Maybe I'll let you guys know on the thread the schedule, because I'm having a baby. If not, in the next couple days, I'm getting induced on Wednesday night. So wish me luck. I was sitting on the couch yesterday. I was texting Veda a little bit, and he's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "I'm sitting on the couch cursing my child for not coming out of me." Like I'm just like kind of being dramatic, you know. And he's like, "Good." He's like, "Relax and chill. This is the beginning of not having control. You can't have it your way anymore." This is how it's like he's always telling me like I complain to him about my suffering. He's like, "Good, that's great. That's really good." He says, "The less control you have, the closer to Krishna." I'm like, oh gosh. So that's what I'm currently going through, just trying to be okay with this child being late and being uncomfortable and accepting that I don't have control, which is so difficult, especially when I've like made a whole living of like having control, as like a project manager. It's like that's my specialty. It's like, well, I can be in control. I can do this. But no, you can't. And I'm learning that. And it's can be a little bit frustrating at times. So, but it's good. The good news is that it brings you closer to God, that realization, because it's not our rightful position, right? We're not the controllers. We're the servants. God is the controller. And that's what we're trying to learn here. Because the more that we think that we're the controller, and the more that we get attached to that mentality, the more that really we suffer, because Krishna teaches us that we're not. It might give us that illusion for a little bit, and it might be kind of nice, but at some point we'll learn that we're not, and that can be painful if we're not ready for it, right? We could fight that. So anyway, that's where I am this morning. I'm so glad you all are here, and let's get right into the Gita. So we're going to start with text 1 this morning. Text 1, chapter 3 is where we are. And this verse says, Arjuna said, "O Jardana, O Keshava, why do you want to engage me in this ghastly warfare if you think that intelligence is better than fruitive work?" So Arjuna's a little bit confused here. This is the third question in the Gita, by the way. There's 17 questions. First was when Arjuna surrendered to Krishna and said, "I'm your disciple, please instruct me," and asked him what he should do. The second was that big section in the last part of chapter 2, where we learned about the characteristics of a perfected yogi. And now Arjuna is asking him this question. And he's confused here because Krishna told him in the last chapter, there was another section where Krishna talked to him about the spiritual benefits of fighting. There's a section in that chapter where we talked to him about the spiritual benefits of fighting. And in that, he started telling him about the path of intelligence. He called this Buddhi Yoga. And what's happening here is that Arjuna is taking that to mean the path of renunciation, like going to the forest and not engaging. And just connecting with God, chanting, doing sadhana, just renouncing from everything. See, because in Arjuna's head, there exist two polarities. And he kind of displayed this to us in the previous chapters. He's either go out and fight or go to the forest and renounce. Those are the two polarities. What Krishna is going to offer here is an integrated solution to that. So it's not go out and fight or go renounce, it's fight with detachment. So on the outside, we're fighting, but on the inside, we're detached. So it's like inner renunciation is how he's going to teach him this. And can look the very same on the outside, but it's vastly different on the inside. Because while he's fighting for his duty, because it's his duty. He's fighting because Krishna wants him to. But inside, personally, he's renounced. He's not personally affected. And that's the difference, is this inner renunciation. And where we left off on the first chapter, way back in the first chapter, if you can remember, Arjuna's pretty undecided between this path of action and the path of renunciation. He makes some comments even in the first chapter, like, it'd be better just to go out into the woods and be by myself, renounce, be a mendicant. And we heard this at the end of chapter 1, how opposed he is to fighting, that he's saying it would be better just to go out and do that. Because here, Arjuna doesn't understand the difference between attached work and detached work. Attached work meaning we know that result that we want, and we're engaging and we're focused on that result, even if it's a little bit subconsciously. We are focused, and we're looking to get something out of it. Like me deciding when my baby should come, and I'm thinking that I'm like, yeah, whatever, she comes whenever. But then when she doesn't do what I want, then I'm upset about it. I'm very attached. But detached is just like Krishna's timing. Whatever God's timing is, I trust that it's in God's hands and it's for the best. And my engagement is not, so that I can be the controller or so that I can get some kind of sense gratification out of it. It's really just an offering. And there's a difference in psychology in that. And we can feel that in ourselves when we're doing something. We can feel, to the degree that we're attached, we experience like a resistance or a frustration when things don't go the way that we want them to, because we're personally attached. But if we're really surrendered, if we're really working for Krishna, if we're really giving the fruits of our action to Krishna, there's a peacefulness about us, an inner peacefulness about us that's either way this goes, that's okay, because I'm just doing it. I'm just connected to the process, and I'm just doing it for Krishna. And I trust that whatever results come out of it are in God's hands. So in chapter 3, Krishna's going to teach us all about detached work. And one of the reasons for Arjuna's confusion is that in the past couple of verses in chapter 2, Krishna uses the word peace a lot when he says not to fight. So Arjuna's thinking, if peace is the motive, then why is Krishna telling me to fight? Because that is not peaceful at all. But as we just talked about, Krishna's talking about inner peace. Inner peace is the motive. And that's what the Gita is referring to. And the inner peace is required to free ourselves from the non-peaceful situations around us. So we can't always control our environment. I'm learning that as I'm sitting on the couch, so uncomfortable, like nauseous. I'm like, I can't control that. You can't control that. But you can control your inner peace, and the Gita's method that it's teaching us is the more that we connect with Krishna, the more peaceful that we feel inside, the more that we direct our efforts in life towards Krishna's service, and we take that rightful role as his servants, and not as the controllers, we will obtain that steadiness. We will obtain that inner peacefulness inside of us, regardless of what's going on around us. Regardless, I do this because the ups and downs of material existence that we're all going to experience today as we walk out of this Sangha and we walk into our day And if right away things are not lining up the way we want them to, and we experience this level of happiness and distress. But the Gita is saying, if we can connect to Krishna, if we can really get into this mindset that we're working for Krishna and dedicate our duty to Krishna, we can get internal peacefulness because we become detached. If we can really practice this sincerely. But Arjuna is still stuck in this outer peace mentality. He's still thinking you need the outer peace to obtain the inner peace. And in that, he's identified all these reasons why fighting is not going to bring him this inner peace, because he's tying the two together, because he's so materially engrossed in his thinking, in his rationale for fighting. So Arjuna is obviously opposed to going to war. In the last chapter, he said he would rather go to the forest and connect with God than entangle himself in all of the consequences that would come with fighting. And he explained all those consequences, which make a lot of sense from a material perspective, right? It's compassion for his loved ones. How's he going to enjoy the kingdom if his loved ones aren't there to enjoy the kingdom with him, right? It's going to wreak havoc to future generations, right? As the traditions get destroyed, who's going to bring them up in this kind of knowledge? Who's going to teach them right? Sinful reactions. He's going to suffer. He's saying he's going to suffer because he's doing bad things. So bad things are going to come back, hurting people. These things make sense, right? You can't, from a material perspective, you can't really argue with them. And so that's where he is. He'd rather go out into the forest than to engage in this and suffer all of these terrible consequences. So Krishna is going to explain that Arjuna's basic nature was to follow the right path. And as soon as he sees that something's not right, his basic instinct is to correct it. Like that's his operating mode, and we'll learn more about different operating modes of different people in the Gita, because there's a specific psychology to Arjuna as a warrior. And in that, there's some characteristics that are just inherent to who he is, to his psychology. And Krishna warned us about this too in chapter 2. He said, work according to your nature, according to your psychology. That's what you really need to do to feel contentment and happiness in material existence. So Krishna's going to tell him, this is your nature. And this is going to be true even if you go to the forest. Right? So even if you go to the forest, you're going to find something that isn't right and that you need to fix, and then you're going to be entangled in that. So sometimes we think that changing our outside circumstance will change the situation for us, right? But then we realize that we're just playing out that same dynamic or same issue in a different set of external circumstances, right? Like how many of us have been there? Either we talked about this so much, like in a relationship, in a professional work environment, in just anything that you're struggling with in life, like any life lesson that you're struggling with, you think, okay, I'm just going to change my set of external circumstances, and then everything's going to click for me and it's going to be better. But then you just see kind of the same problem popping up, but under a different dress. So he's saying you can't run away from the situation because the problem exists inside of you, or not even necessarily a problem, but your nature exists inside of you. So in spiritual life, we learn a lot about knowledge, the difference between spirit and matter and the controller of both, right? We've defined knowledge as that difference between spirit and matter and the controller of both. But the wisdom that we obtain from these texts, it doesn't come from just knowing. Like, unfortunately, we can't all just sit in this class, learn these concepts, walk out and say, okay, I got it now. My life is going to be reflective of all of these things that I know, right? We all know it doesn't work like that. Otherwise, I wouldn't be sitting on my couch frustrated that this baby isn't coming when I wanted her to come, right? Because I know that I'm not the controller. I know this. I've heard this a million times. But for whatever reason, it's not realized yet inside of me. I still have this attachment. I still have this like that I can control. Things should go my way. And if they don't, it's not okay. I still have this attachment. So wisdom comes when we apply the knowledge, right? When we live by what we learn. And that's so important. We have to practice. We can't just go out to the forest and say, you know what? I'm done with all of this. I'm going to make the most spiritual advancement by just going out, not being around any people, anything at all, and just connect with God. Because these issues, this issues that exist inside of us, they're not just going to go away. We have to work through them, right? We have to work it out. We have to work it in. That's how we work it in, is by working it out. I just made that up. That's not too bad, right? We have to work it out to work it in. Anyway, okay, wisdom comes when we apply knowledge, when we live by what we learn. So in the last chapter, Krishna gave Arjuna the parameters of the information required to grow in spiritual life, right? He told him the difference between soul and matter, gave him characteristics of the soul. He talked about the super soul, the Paramatma that exists inside of us, that's advising the soul, how the soul is so covered by material attachments and is pursuing that because it thinks that that's what will make it happy. He told him all of these things. But merely knowing this data is just not enough. So if you're stuck in that trap, if you're like, I know all of these things, but I'm still operating to this, that's normal. That's okay. We're going to know these things and we're still going to struggle. But this is why the process exists, right? This is why the process of bhakti yoga is that we engage in the world, and that in itself will purify us, right? We engage in the world, we dedicate the fruits of our labor to Krishna. We try to dovetail whatever we're doing into Krishna's service, and in that way we become purified. That's the process. And if we don't live by what we learn, if we don't have the opportunities to practice these things, it remains theoretical. If I'm not constantly having this alert, then I'm not the controller. If I'm, Veda says, oh, this is just the beginning of you learning that you're not the controller. I'm going to have a little child running around, and I'm assuming everybody tells me this, and I'm assuming this is going to be a big lesson for me. Anybody who has kids, it's like, it's no longer all about what you want. And a lot like, I'm taking these infant childcare classes, and they're like, you just do what the baby wants. Whatever the baby needs, that's what you do. That's your schedule. It's like, okay. So it's like, I have a new boss. My new boss is this baby. Well, I'm not used to a new boss. I'm used to being the boss. So it's a whole thing. Like, okay, I don't have control over this anymore. My sleep patterns, none of it. And that's going to be purifying. And I'm going to learn that lesson over and over again. And that's the process. And if I can show up as a mother and not try to be the possessor, not get into the mentality that this child is mine and the purpose of this child is to make me happy, right? If I can really try to imbibe this mentality that this child is entrusted to me to care for as on behalf of God, right? I'm just really a caretaker on behalf of God. And my purpose is really to bring this child closer to God. If I can really try to imbibe that mentality, then I'll catch myself when I'm not doing that, right? And that'll be purifying. I'll see just where my ego shows up. I'll see just where my selfishness shows up. I'll see where I'm trying to be the controller. I'll see all these things and I'll fight with them. And hopefully I'll get some wins in. I'll probably get a good amount of losses in, but I'll suffer according to the amount of losses I have. And according to the amount of wins I have, I'll experience this joy, happiness, connection with God. And in that, my relationship with God will improve. I'll grow spiritually and I'll become closer to Krishna. And that's the process here. So we have to live it. This is what Krishna's saying. You have to go out and engage. You can't just run away from it. And what's needed to solve our problems is not just the knowledge, but it's the wisdom. And we all experience that too. We have these experiences in life that teach us these lessons that then the next time that we show up and we have an experience in life, we see that, oh, okay, I'm actually in a little bit better place. I can handle this a little bit better. I'm a little more peaceful. I've understood a little bit better that I'm not the controller, and it's not completely knocking me on my butt this time. Right? We can see that in just our inner consciousness. We can feel that maybe in how emotional we get, how we lose our minds, how off track it gets us if when we start to realize these things. So, but this is how we make this incremental progress in our spiritual lives. We notice that we're a little bit more peaceful when that guy cuts us off in traffic, a little bit more peaceful when our boss doesn't do things the way that we want them to. We see that incremental progress, but there's no way to get over some of these things in our life than to go through them. We have to experience them. And the more that we can learn to see them as things that are challenging us for our growth, as growth opportunities, right? And not things that are in our way that frustrate us, right? That might be our initial reaction. But then if we can start to see them as growth opportunities, then we can become more purified. Then we can really, learn from them. But we have to kind of start to cultivate that perspective around them. And this isn't easy. Spiritual life, it's not easy, right? It's easy to go out to the forest away from everybody. It's easy to love everybody when you're not engaged with them, right? You're like, oh, this is great. If you're not engaged or you're not working with somebody, and you don't have to deal with how annoying they are to work with. They're awesome. You have no problem with them, right? But when you start to push somebody, when you start to push somebody else's buttons, maybe in a marriage, maybe in a work relationship, maybe your child, you start to see, okay, now I have to cultivate this level of like love and peacefulness when I'm in the midst of this external chaos or frustration. And that's difficult. That's can be so much more difficult than going out and just renouncing from it all, just staying on the outside, right? Being inside this fire. This is difficult. But the wisdom of connecting with God in every situation comes when we connect to Him in given situations rather than changing the situation, right? It's if we can, wherever we are, whatever we're experiencing, whatever's up against us, whatever resistance, whatever confrontation, if we can try to experience and connect with God in that situation, that's how we make the progress. Not by constantly trying to change our situation so that it can be set up in a perfect way that we feel we can make advancement, right? So this is kind of what he's teaching us here. This common fallacy that whenever we're in trouble, we tend to think that something else will bring us peace, not knowing that the real problem is inside of us. And we cannot run away from that. It'll just keep popping up. Or maybe it'll be suppressed, like be able to repress it for a little while, but there will be an opportunity that we'll see it come back out. And that's why we have to confront these things. The external situation just brings the problem out onto the surface. It's not that this is a problem for me. It's that this set of circumstances triggered something inside of me that was dissettled. And now it's manifesting into external chaos. But it really exists inside of me. Like when my therapist told me when I was dating that, you choose somebody, a partner that has the same level of wounds as you. And we all have these wounds, these scabs. And when you choose somebody, if you're pretty scabbed up and your partner's pretty scabbed up, you're going to rub against each other and your wounds are going to open. And in that opening of each other's wounds, you're going to either come closer together and get through your issues together, or you're going to separate. But the point is that you're going to attract somebody with the same level of wounds. Right? So if I'm somebody who, I'll tell you guys right now, one of my things, I don't always trust myself. I shouldn't even say I don't always. It's something I struggle with. It's just like trusting that I can do this, or that, I know what I'm doing, or I like to like kind of give that control to other people because I don't always have the confidence. And this used to be really bad when I was younger, and I'm working on it more now. But then I end up in some like not great situations with some like controlling people because I look for people that I can give my power over to. And it also is like an excuse for me not to have to deal with my own issues, right? So I look for people I can give my power over to. And to the degree that I'm with a controlling person, I want to be controlled. There's some like defect in me that I'm looking for that because I don't trust myself. So then I don't have to face myself, whatever it is. There's a whole list of reasons I do this, but it's not like, oh, I didn't, I'm unlucky. My partner's so controlling. It's like, no, I was attracted to that to the degree that I have that void inside of me. I have that defect inside of me. I'm attracted to that. And in that, the chaos that explodes on the outside, it's not like, oh, this is his fault. And it'd be easy to say that because some of the situations were pretty irrational. But at the same time, it's like I chose to be in that situation, and I chose to be in that situation because I'm just as damaged internally. And it may look, it may be easy to decide who's the perpetrator and who's the victim on the outside, but really what's happening here is that we're both wounded, and that's playing out in our collaborative dynamic. And in those moments, we can take the opportunity to see what's in front of us and try to take responsibility for why that's in front of us, and try to tweak that a little bit so that we can change, our future dynamics, or we don't, and they keep showing up. And this is actually a dynamic that has continued to show up in my life that I've had to confront. And in different situations, in different masks, I'll actually share with you guys in a little bit how that I've seen that situation continue to show up. And I've done all different things. I've tried to run away from it. I've, left relationships. I've left town. And it's like, it follows me. It follows me. And I have to confront. This is something that's inside of me. It's, even though I'm involved with these people who have, the issues of their own, I'm constantly in this situation because this exists inside of me. If not, I wouldn't be choosing these people in my life, right? And so once we can confront that, then we can choose healthier situations for ourselves, situations that upgrade our consciousness, situations that bring us closer to God. And in that, we make spiritual progress. So Arjuna wanted to run away, but Krishna wanted him to fight. And this is our struggle a lot. Should I run away or should I fight? Should I take it up or should I give it up? And this what I'm talking about in my own self. I'll share my personal experience with this, and then maybe somebody else could share a personal experience with this, because I think if we all think about it, this could be so relevant in all of our lives. Things that we're running away from in our lives, parts of ourselves that we're running away from, that we're blaming our externals, but really they exist inside of us. And my spiritual journey, I've always been a seeker. I've always been involved in different paths. And when I found Bhakti, I knew like right away, like this is the path for me. Like pretty quickly when I started chanting God's names really did it for me. It was like a turbo booster compared to any other practice that I'd done in a spiritual community, and that I just felt so connected to God, and I automatically felt less attached to other things, to material things, and it gave me a clarity that like I'd been looking for my whole life. It was like, wow, it's like the fog was rising. It was really chanting for me was a really profound when I first started, and still is, but that's really what drew me in. And so I got involved in this, and I was in a job that was like I was in a good place in my job. It wasn't like at the best place in my job, but I was a good place in my job. But I was in this relationship that I've talked about a lot that was really controlling. It was like a 5-year relationship. And when I started practicing this, he did not like this because my life revolved around whatever he wanted, whenever he wanted it. And so it didn't get a lot of support. And I decided, and I worked with him. I worked with him at my job. And I decided to leave the relationship. And it was really difficult for me to leave the relationship. And he was really upset and like made it really difficult for me. Like it was just not a good situation. And so I decided to move to Philadelphia. I lived in upstate New York. I decided to move to Philadelphia. I had met these people in India that had a yoga studio and they were looking for a manager, and they were in my path as well. They were kind of new as well. But I was like, oh, I'll move to Philadelphia. I'll do that. There was definitely a sense of like running away from my problem. And I was running away from the situation that I was in. I was worried that like if I stayed around, I'd get sucked into him again. And I was just like, I was I was thinking that if I did all of this and I managed this yoga studio, this would be a better service for me, more closely related to God, so I left and I kind of ran away from it. And I've shared this before on the episodes, even my guru, when I met him, he's like, don't change anything in your life initially. Like, just keep things the way they are. Don't make any rash changes. Well, I changed my whole life. I owned a house. I sold the house. I moved to Philadelphia. Luckily, like at the last minute, my work is like, if you want to stay and work part-time, you can just come in and work at least 20 hours a week and whenever you want, however you want, and you can keep your benefits and we'll still pay you. And so I ended up taking that deal, which ended up being a good deal because when I got to Philadelphia with these people, I kind of ended up in the same situation that I was in the relationship. It wasn't a romantic relationship, but I gave away all of my power to them. And then when I tried to start taking it back in ways that were pretty reasonable, they weren't used to it. And it caused some friction to a point where I was like, this is not what I want either. And so then I went back to my work and I applied to a job, like a promotion within that same company, because luckily I held on to that job part-time because they just offered me this great deal. And I applied and I got a nice promotion, and that brought me to Pittsburgh. And then I worked at Pittsburgh for a while. And that was like good. I actually started getting on track. I started seeing like, okay, I started recognizing this dynamic, like, okay, this isn't just in romantic relationships. This is just how I am, period. So I started recognizing this and kind of trying to correct. My career started getting really good. I got these promotions as project manager, and it was like I was in a really, really great spot. I met my husband, who is like a really great partner, totally different than relationships in the past. Like he just really supported me as me and was more like a partner. So that was great. And then a couple of years after that, this came around again where I was really involved in some service, and the service was getting to be a lot. And I was thinking, it might make sense for me to step out of this job and do this service. And all the same, I was practicing this mentality at work that like, I was kind of giving up this idea of needing to be this great, smart, successful, material person to get worth and value in life. All the while, this idea was kind of like my attachment to that identity was kind of like lessening. So I felt like I didn't really, the job, it was nice for my skill set. I was making nice money, but it just was like I didn't really need it anymore for my ego in the way that I had once. And so I started thinking, oh, maybe there'd be an opportunity for me to leave and do this service more full time. So I asked my husband, and my husband is like supportive of it, just like incredible. So then it was like, okay, maybe I don't need this job for money. I don't need this job for my ego. There's an opportunity, I'll step out. And at this point, I'd felt much different. Like, whereas I left my job before, I was definitely running away from. I was running away from this whole situation that I'd created. And then I ran right back into to a similar dynamic, albeit completely different circumstances. And it wasn't a romantic relationship, but it was still kind of governed by the same, dynamics. This time, I had settled in Pittsburgh, had a good job, had a good husband, and I was like, okay, maybe now I can step out. And I really felt this time like I was running towards something, not running away from something, but running towards something. And I also felt like, I remember asking my guru for his blessing to leave. And I felt like in that moment, whatever he said, I was okay with. Like I knew in my heart, whatever he said, I was okay with. I knew that I would like the service I felt more connected to. But if my guru, this person that was advising me spiritually and that I really trusted, if he told me it would be better for your spiritual life, better service to God to stay where you are and do what you're doing, I'd say, okay, that makes sense. I'll do that. No problem. And I felt that in my heart. It was like there was a different shift than when I was running away from. And when he warned me, hey, be careful, don't make any of these changes. And I thought, he doesn't know. He doesn't really understand my unique circumstances. So I did it anyway because I was attached, because I was thinking that I knew how to set things up. I knew what the service would look like. I knew if I got away from this situation, I'd be in a better situation, which I wasn't. I was actually like, thank goodness that my work extended that offer to me to work part-time. And then I met my husband and, things lined up, but it wasn't like I could get away from this situation and get away from the problem because the problem was me. The problem was me. And I learned that. And in that, it gave me a good sense of humility going forward, enough to for a couple years down the road when I was in the same situation to say, you know what, whatever way that this wise advanced soul, directs me to go, I'm going to listen to, because that's really my main goal is just to serve God. And however, my community or my leaders, my teachers, the people that I entrust advise me on that, then I'm okay with. And that's the difference. That's the difference, that kind of mentality. And I'm not saying that I have that all the time now, because I certainly don't. But you could tell the difference when you're running away from versus when you're running towards. When you're attached for your own, because you want to be the controller, because you think you know what will bring you more happiness and pleasure, versus when you're genuinely detached because your motive is deeper than that. You're connected to a deeper purpose. And in that, you have more trust and surrender to God. So that was kind of an experience for me where I could see directly in my life where I was trying to just renounce when I really needed to work through. And I'm still working through. This problem still pops up to me, albeit every time I see it, it's a little bit smaller. And I'm gaining, and also I'm attracting more people to myself that encourage me to be me. Like my husband's one of those people, like Veda's one of those people. Like I would have never trusted myself to do a podcast without like Veda's push and encouragement. And like, but the way that he encouraged me was much different than I had experienced in the past. That was helpful to me. It helped me to grow into the person that I'm meant to be. It helped me to step into my dharma. He supported me like that, the same way that my husband does. And in that, we make progress. I see where I give up too much of my power and rely too much on other people, and then I'm disappointed and get in these cycles, and this is the process. This is purifying these things that we have to work on. And in that, when I take back my power, I can give it to God, and that's really the rightful place, is even any success that I have, knowing that it's coming from God. But I have to give that power to God. If I give it to other people, I'm not giving it to God. And that's been such a lesson. And the more that I've learned to give it to God, the more that I've seen just like beautifulness in my life. Right. So this is so relevant. This is so relevant to me. And I hope that it's relevant to you in today's context, when we often have this escapist mentality and a very theoretical approach towards connecting with God and his creation. You know, we think, oh, if I just sit on the couch and I meditate for hours and I read for hours, I'm making spiritual advancement. And you are, these things are important. But we also have to understand that we have to engage, we have to practice, we have to bring this knowledge to wisdom in order to really imbibe it. And if we're not doing that, we're missing these opportunities. You know, this is the path. This is what Krishna's teaching us. It's the path. So that was my experience. Does anybody want to share anything? I hate that I've talked so long and we haven't got to hear from any of you guys. Somebody please share something with us. A reflection, a similar experience. No, great. Please share with us.
Well, it's I don't know if it's quite a sharing, but I guess I have a little bit different, and so maybe it's a question or it's and I've mentioned this before. I come into this practice for I guess six months or 9 months, whatever, and I'm picking things from the menu that resonate with me, and really finding it really wonderful. Um, I guess my feeling has been that that the divine is within and within all of us, and so I'm when I've come across a problem or a situation, um, I I look for divine guidance, or I trust the divine within to provide that guidance. Um, I I don't believe at this point that God is a puppeteer making me and everyone else take the actions that they do. I feel like the divine is not controlling me, and I think, or controlling the situation, uh, except for possibly nudging me in the right direction with divine intuition. Um, she's not pulling me and saying you've got to do this. The divine is there for me to trust that within myself I've got that wisdom, and and that I've got that power to do something, to take that action. Um, I was thinking Todd earlier was saying that he was working on his, putting in some tiling, and when I was doing that myself, I was finding, uh, kind of from Italian heritage, that I was finding Italian words that certainly were not the words of the divine, screaming and yelling when I cut a tile wrong. Or so anyway, but the divine did guide me, I believe, with my own abilities to make that curved tile around the step, or whatever, whatever the situation was. So anyway, I guess I'm feeling slightly different than God is the puppeteer of all of our lives. I feel like we all come together, and I'm visiting New York City, and what an amazing! I look out the window, and there's thousands and thousands of people. I walk down the street, and we're all like taking steps. We know where to step so that we don't run into each other. Um, we're all working together as one, um, and it's an amazing place to see the divine in so many people at once, acting together to bring joy to their families. And also something that came up to me is that um, you're like the parent of me. I'm like your little child. I'm learning from you. And I'm not telling you you have to, but you're. I just feel like you're nurturing me, and everybody on this call, and it is, I feel the divine within in a powerful way because of these calls. So thank you for yeah, thank you for all you do.
Yeah.
And maybe I'll have a birthday twin on December 4th.
Oh, that's your birthday, maybe. Oh, that's so sweet. She'd be in good company.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing. That's great. I feel so nourished by all of you. I definitely feel the same. Like this is a community. We uplift each other. We learn from each other, and this is another reason I love learning. I love hearing from all of you. And thank you so much for sharing that, Nild. And I don't know that what you're explaining, what you're describing, is so different than what I'm describing. You know, God exists in all of our hearts and guides us 100%. But it's just to the degree that we listen, and we can even like block out that voice because the voice of our ego is so strong and we choose to follow that. And so, and if we're not consistently connecting with God in our sadhana, if we're not engaged in sanghas with similarly minded people, uplifting association, if we're not learning this knowledge, if we're not, meditating, chanting God's names, if we're not doing these things, it's very easy for that voice of the ego to get so loud that we don't hear the voice in our heart. And that's why we have this process, and that's why we have gurus and sadhus, people that have walked this path before us that can advise us, that have wider vision, and we learn the knowledge ourselves so that we can apply it and we can discern. And that's the process here so that we can hear God in our heart, because if not, we don't, sometimes we can be guided by our own ego or our senses, or that's that in that first example. When I moved to Philadelphia, like I saw God pop up in my life. Like he never left me, otherwise I wouldn't be here today because of those decisions that I made. We're selling my house. When I went back to work, part-time, I just crashed with a friend. It was like I got this apartment in Philadelphia. It was like rat infested in this not great area. It was like I made some not great choices, and I don't know that that was in line with what God was telling me. I think that was more about my own wanting to run away from my situation, wanting to me deciding the best way to serve God. I think it was more about myself and my ego, because I think that voice was the loudest. I hadn't developed my connection with God that I could get out of my own way enough to hear, so we have to refine that. We have to work on that. And in that, to the degree that we can get out of our own way, silence the ego, we can hear, we can we can hear and follow, God in the heart. But if we're attached, if we're so attached, we can't sometimes see through the forest. And so yeah, then to the degree that we're surrendered, we can listen, and that's the goal here in Bhakti Yoga. We want to surrender to that voice so that we can connect more with it and hear. Chris, you want to share? I just met Chris in Pittsburgh, and really appreciating Chris, and he shared a lot of his realizations with me. Just said on the chat board, is there a relatable story? Yeah, please share your relatable story, Chris.
All right. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
First off, sorry I hopped in late, but it's actually kind of a coincidence because I just started the third chapter of the Gita. It's always in constant rotation, and I just finished up the second chapter like 2 days ago. So I'm right on the same page with you. That's pretty neat.
Great.
Yeah, I appreciate what everybody's sharing, what you're sharing about the decisions that we're making for ourselves versus like what God wants. And for me, the association of devotees changed everything for me about a year ago, because this is like embarrassing to share, but I was basically ready to leave my marriage. I was just unhappy. I had an apartment signed. I have a 4-year-old daughter. I was just unhappy with how things were and so hyper focused on what I wanted. I have the right to feel this or that, or I have the right to be happy, not focusing on my responsibility. So I got in touch with some devotees because, I had this whole plan in my head, and I was like, maybe I should talk to somebody who's a little smarter than I am, or who's a little more spiritually advanced than I am. So I reached out to two people, and I got the same answer from both of them, which was basically, in the Gita, Arjuna is geared up to fight his entire family. And he doesn't want to do that. But what Krishna's telling him is like, you have a responsibility. However this goes down, what matters is you doing your duty, your dharma. And these people didn't tell me, stay with your family, stay with your wife, make it work on yourself. But just them pointing out that, like, this book, these fundamental truths in here are all about listening to God and doing what we're supposed to do. And it just shifted. I have a family to take care of. I have to be the best version of me that I can be for them. So really, like, grinding on working on myself made me a better father, a better husband. And nothing, like, there was no, like, infidelity or anything super intense happening. I just wasn't happy. And I can say today that I made the right decision, thanks to the association of other devotees. Because let me tell you what, left to my own devices, my decisions get a little sideways. I chant and I read and I do all this, but material existence is piling up little by little on my heart all the time. And if I don't have people around to help me find ways to clean that off, even with the chanting, even with the reading, even with the meditation and the prayer, it's a strong force to deal with.
Yeah.
Long story short, I appreciate everybody here. I'm glad you're doing this. You were the perfect person to be doing this. And thanks for letting me just share my little story about why I shouldn't listen to what I think is right off the bat.
I love that. Thank you so much, Chris. That was so wonderful. And I couldn't agree more. We can't just depend on ourselves solely. We have to depend on this community, and we do have to trust in people. We just have to discern the right people to trust in, to kind of, give that to, like, so that we can go to and say, please instruct me. And we know that they're grounded in this wisdom. They're realized to this wisdom to an extent that we maybe haven't yet obtained. And therefore we listen to them. And in that we realize where we're attached and where we're not, and what needs to be purified. And hopefully we can work through to work out to work in. Thank you. That was beautiful. I love that share. Katie, you want to share?
Hi, thank you. Hey, Vol. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. I think, boy, all this like weaves together so wonderfully. Thinking about timing, just last week, in my once a week class with my teacher, we were talking a lot about guru and dharma and choices and stuff. And so it's just the timing is so perfect. So I thought I'd share a little bit, which might be a little bit of a repeat, but like we were talking about the difference between dharma, like what is my destiny, and versus this thing called mana dharma, which is from my own mind and desires. And that, like he was saying, when you get a guru, the mana dharma is done. Then you're at the point where you're going to do the will of your guru and not my own mind and preferences. And then, by then your relationship is built up where you trust and love that person. And that, that experience is so wonderful to have that going both ways. And then it was helpful for me because learning, I don't yet know all these different words and things. And like, so a few things he was saying, like the duty of the guru is to find your holes, like your missing parts or your weaknesses, and cut the illusion, so like you were saying, sometimes it's a little like he's like, yeah, that's great, you're feeling great, you're feeling bad, great, kind of thing. Yeah. And then so so it helps me to understand like the Diksha guru is that main person, right? But then Shiksha gurus kind of can be other people, like our relationships with other devotees. And it really helps when those people, even know each other, or of course are in our same lineage, or, it's supporting what the Diksha guru is saying, which I feel so blessed to have. And, have like meeting you, and other people in my world, and that, like a final reminder though from him was like, well, Krishna is the real guru, or like the ultimate. And it just makes me always happily remember like our parampara. And yeah, so that's really kind of it. But and I guess like right now, I'm like doing some medical stuff that may or may not work, and sometimes it just feels really unreal. So you say, okay, just get this bit over with as fast as possible. But then it's like, no, I mean, this is an effort, so it can help to just be like, okay, this is real. This is what's happening in my life right now, and feel committed and do work. But then also realize like it may not work, and try to kind of like be along for the ride a little more of like, okay, I'm gonna, instead of being like, oh my god, this process, be like, wow, this is actually a little bit interesting, it has a purpose, hopefully it'll work, but rather than that kind of just like fear or just try to get it over with, but feel a little more like, okay, I'm gonna do this and accept, I trust Krishna's timing and plan, so anyway, I just thought it was interesting that like my most recent notes from just the other day is like kind of very in line with what everybody's sharing. So thanks.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that wisdom with us. Yeah, that's beautiful and so relatable. And yeah, I love that. And the guru relationship too, it doesn't have to be, it's not like dogmatic, like just tell me what to do. And you can talk through it, and somebody who's really understands you and who is again rooted and grounded in this, it can be like a sounding board experience. And my experience with my guru is that it's never like you do this, you do, it's like like I said, I didn't even listen to him the first time, and I called him up the second time. I was so embarrassed, my tail between my legs, like, and he was just again there for me. And this time I chose to listen, and I saw how much I definitely saw that was a way better decision. but but it's that's a choice that we make, and we see what happens as we make these choices, and then they inspire our next choices, and they hopefully make these relationships stronger, and we build trust and faith, and ultimately brings us closer to Krishna. So thank you for sharing that. And we have a responsibility too, that's what it is. I had a responsibility that I was neglecting at first, to know this stuff myself, so that I can show up and say, okay, well, you're saying this, but just like, I mean, Arjuna's kind of having this conversation with Krishna, that's our conversation with our gurus, with our elders, with our, okay, well, I don't really quite get that. That doesn't quite make sense because of this. And then we choose, and then they love us anyway. Yeah, it's beautiful. Thank you. Anybody else want to share? I think we're about out of time here, but it's so nice talking with you all. Let's see what the board's doing. Oh yes, please share.
Well, thank you so much for sharing all this. It seems like I'm totally on the same issues that you have gone through. It's like amazing timing, because I'm totally in the same situations that I have to grow and not run away. And it's very painful. It's very challenging. And like you, I have had this situation so many times. And it's about, that I don't want to be responsible, so others take control. Yeah, and it's really difficult. Yeah. So, but thank you so much the way you explained everything. It's really helpful. It gives me a feeling I'm not on my own.
No, they're not on your own. This is the journey for all of us.
Yes.
And thank you. Thanks for sharing. And the board Narayani says, thank you so much for sharing. She can't, since I'm at work, I can't chat, but I've made that experience of trusting in divine guidance too. It took a while, I must admit, but it's actually really powerful. Yeah, we're all in training here. We're all in training. And I'll leave this when this one last conversation that I had with my guru. I called him up one time and I was like, I just want an instruction. Just give me any instruction. Whatever you say, I'll do. And it was like, and the instruction that he gave me in that moment was follow your intuition. And when he told me that in that moment, I thought, man, I better get clear on my intuition. It made me, I was like, I need to study and read and immerse myself in this because that's what I want to be connected to my intuition, not my intuition that's based off of my fear and my past conditioning. And so it was like upgrading. It was like an up level, like, okay, it's time for me to take responsibility for my spiritual life here, if that's what my guru is telling me, because I need to get my intuition connected to the right sources. And I also thought it was a beautiful instruction. You know, it made me feel like he trusted me. And we all have that. So we all have access to that. We all have resources and these people, our community. So thank you all so much for coming. Stay connected on the thread and we'll know the schedule. I'm trying to get Chaitanya Charan to come. I think maybe at the end, like in 2 weeks. So anyway, stay connected on the schedule and for updates on where we are. And if you want to use this couple weeks time break to catch up on episodes, there's a whole playlist on YouTube on all podcast platforms. You can catch up to get where we are right now, the beginning of chapter 3. And then hopefully in a couple weeks, we can all come back together and continue. So thank you. Oh, and please join our family thread. It's pinned in the top of our Seeker's Quest WhatsApp thread. There's a link where if you click on that pin, then you can join our family thread. And we have so many nice conversations that go on throughout the week, shares, kind of a continuation of this. And when I have baby, I'll post baby pictures on that thread too, so that I don't like bombard the Seeker's Quest admin thread with it all. So anyway, please join that thread. We can stay connected and thank you all.
All right, Ball. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for coming.